just have a quick opening and then I'll take your questions. It has become very clear now, with allegations coming out on a daily basis that are continuing to erode people's confidence in our democracy, that we need a public inquiry. So we have a vote on that today. Our motion will be voted on today, and we're calling on all members of the House, particularly the Prime Minister, to let his MPs vote in favor of an independent, transparent public inquiry. That is the only way to clear the air. There are communities that are at risk of being stigmatized, and the only way for us to address all the seriousness of this, get to the bottom of it, and propose real solutions is with a public inquiry. Donc aujourd'hui, notre motion est là, et c'est clair, après toutes les allégations qui chaque jour sont publiées, on a besoin d'une enquête publique. Et on va poser la question directement au Premier ministre, est-ce qu'il va laisser ses députés voter en faveur de notre motion pour une enquête publique? C'est important, c'est essentiel, et c'est exactement ce qu'on doit faire.
If the vote doesn't go the way that you want it to go today, what comes next? How do you push this with the Liberals?
We're going to look at a number of ways to continue to push for a public inquiry. But I just want to take a moment to talk about the communities that are at risk of being stigmatized. Right now, without a public inquiry, without a public airing, there is a serious risk for communities to get stigmatized. And that is a problem. We don't want that to happen. We want people to have trust in our democracy and not to be suspicious of their neighbors. We want to have a public airing of what's going on so we can actually identify the problems and solve it. So what we'll do is we'll continue to ask questions in question period. We'll be meeting with the special rapporteur and say that this is the path that we suggest. A public inquiry is important, and we'll consider other motions that we can bring before the House, like the vote that we're bringing today.
Vous parlez de stigmatisation, M. Singh, mais vous avez été le premier politicien à dénoncer Han Dong après la publication du reportage Le Global News hier, sans peut-être, diront certains, respecter sa présomption d'innocence. Est-ce que vous croyez Han Dong quand il dit que les faits qu'on lui reproche ne se sont pas produits?
Le problème, ce n'est pas à propos de M. Dong, c'est une question de la perception. Et la perception à ce moment...
Sur M. Dong, est-ce que vous le croyez, oui ou non?
Non, ma réponse reste la même réponse parce que ce n'est pas une question de la réputation ou la crédibilité de M. Dong, c'est une question de la perception du public. Et avec les allégations assez sérieuses, c'est important de prendre au sérieux les allégations pour protéger notre démocratie. Donc, dans ce cas où le Premier ministre résiste à avoir une enquête publique, c'est important de montrer que c'est sérieux, qu'il prend ces allégations sérieuses, mais tout ça soulève que la meilleure façon de gérer tout ça, c'est avec une enquête publique pour arrêter la stigmatisation, pour vérifier c'est quoi la vérité et pour trouver des solutions.
Est-ce qu'il a fait la bonne chose, selon vous? Est-ce qu'il a fait la bonne chose en décidant de se retirer du caucus libéral? Et est-ce que ça vous va qu'il continue à siéger comme indépendant?
Et il a fait la bonne chose, oui.
Are you considering pulling out of the confidence and supply agreement over this?
That is not a decision we're making today. What we're doing today is we're forcing a vote in Parliament on this very matter. We're forcing a vote, and we're calling on the Prime Minister to allow his MPs to vote in favor of our motion, which would be the will of the House to have an independent public inquiry. So that's what we're doing today. We're focusing on forcing a public inquiry because that's what's needed.
You say you have no problem with David Johnston, so why not wait 2 months? Because that's how long he has to decide on whether or not there should be a public inquiry.
I think given the seriousness of the allegations as they keep on coming forward, we need a public inquiry. And while I don't have a problem with the reputation and the credibility of Mr. Johnston, I do believe that all the concerns that are being raised, all the allegations that keep on coming forward, all the leaks that keep on happening, the only way to clear the air, to assure that we are having a public airing of this and to restore confidence in the public is a public inquiry. And that's irrespective of my position on Mr. Johnston. We need a public inquiry. And given the most recent allegations, it's become abundantly clear. And that's why we're forcing a vote today. There will be a vote in this House today on whether or not there should be a public inquiry. And I'm calling on the Prime Minister, let his MPs vote in favor of this motion and express the will of the House so that we launch a public inquiry.
Do you plan to let them vote the way that that they want to today, are you going to consider pulling support then, or are you going to continue to prop up this government even if they don't vote for a special inquiry today?
Well, ultimately, what we want is a public inquiry. We don't want an election, particularly we don't want an election in the context of a time when people are raising legitimate concerns about foreign interference. That would be an irresponsible position. We want a public inquiry. We're going to keep on pushing for that. We're voting on one today, and we'll look at other ways to continue to force this issue. Our goal is to protect our democracy. And I want to point out a difference between us and the other parties. While the Liberals have put up roadblocks to block the truth and resisted having witnesses come forward, and the Conservatives are playing games. We could have had the vote that we're having today 2 days ago, but the Conservatives blocked it because they're not really interested in the truth. They're not interested truly in a public inquiry. What they want to do is play games here and score points on the Liberals. We don't care to score points on this. I'll fight the Prime Minister on public health care. I'll fight the Prime Minister on making sure we tax the super wealthy. We stand up to CEOs of grocery stores. I'll fight back on those points. But when it comes to our democracy, this is where we should all come together and protect it. And this is not what I'm seeing from the Conservatives or the Liberals. And that's why we're positioning ourselves to say a public inquiry is the right way forward to protect our democracy, to ensure that public has trust in voting. I want people to feel confident they can vote, and that's why I'm pushing for a public inquiry.
Mr. Singh, we know that. À propos du chemin Roxham, sorry, just this one.
I was going to go to you for a new question, but then he kept on being so persistent. I'll come to you right after that.
À propos du chemin Roxham, qui est un dossier important pour le Canada comme pour les États-Unis, avez-vous l'impression que le Canada est en train de signer une bonne entente avec les États-Unis?
Il y a des signaux, mais on ne sait pas c'est exactement quoi l'entente. On verra c'est quoi l'entente, mais ce qui est clair, notre position était, on doit suspendre tout de suite l'entente tir-pays sûr. Ça va immédiatement régler les choses. C'était notre position, ça reste notre position. Mais s'il y a une autre façon de régler ce qui se passe, on est ouvert parce qu'on doit régler ce problème.
Okay. Mr. Singh, we know that when it comes to foreign influence, it's not just the Chinese, it's the Russians, it's the Iranians, and parties of all political stripes are targeted. What I'd like to know is what you have said to within your own party apparatus, within your own party members, about how you can safeguard the NDP itself from any potential interference or influence, or have you done those audits as well internally?
So we conduct regular audits after every election, and we do a regular review of our process. There has been no evidence brought forward. There's been no allegations brought forward in any way to raise concerns about foreign interference in any of our processes. But we continue to have evaluations and assessments to make sure we're doing everything possible on a regular basis.
Sur le chemin Roxham, si par exemple c'était d'appliquer l'entente sur les tiers pays sûrs à toute la frontière, est-ce que ce serait une solution avec laquelle vous seriez à l'aise?
On ne sait pas c'est quoi la solution qui va être proposée. Mais oui, c'est une solution. Ce n'est pas notre solution préférée. On a dit qu'on doit suspendre l'entente tout de suite. C'est quelque chose que le gouvernement aurait pu faire, aurait dû faire dans le passé. C'est une solution immédiate. Mais on est ouvert à écouter c'est quoi la solution proposée. Mais ce qui est clair, parce qu'on a entendu les inquiétudes de plusieurs personnes, on doit régler ce problème.
Can we get that in English, please?
Yeah. Our preferred solution to the Roxham Road situation was is still to suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement. We believe that would give dignity to people that are already fleeing serious threats to their lives, refugees and asylum seekers. So suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement would allow people to pass regularly and still be processed in that fashion. Because of that agreement, people have to pass irregularly, and that's been a serious problem. So our solution remains suspend the agreement. We don't know what is being proposed exactly. There are some signals that there's a solution. If the solution solves a problem, it's something we're open to. Our preferred option is still to suspend the agreement, but we're open to other solutions.
Can you elaborate on the issue which you said earlier about that you do not want to trigger an election in light of the fact that there are these allegations of interference? Do you feel that the fact that you do not know enough about the level of interference, that putting it to a confidence vote or pulling out of your agreement with the Liberals, that it would actually cause an issue in the next election, that we could be at risk of further interference? Can you clarify those remarks?
Sure, yeah. Given that our concern is, and the legitimate concerns being raised, are concerns around foreign interference in an election. My goal is to safeguard democracy, encourage people to participate, make sure people feel comfortable voting and feel safe to vote and are not being influenced in their votes. That goal is met by having a public inquiry. That goal is not met by triggering an election, which will then be an election open to all those same potential risks of interference, of nomination meetings where there's interference, all the allegations that we've heard. Why would I want to subject the country to all those risks when what I want to do is actually safeguard our democracy? The goal, or that goal, is achieved by having a public inquiry. That goal is not achieved by triggering an election.
Do you think that will do the right thing?
Inquiry might take, given how much of it might have to happen in camera because of intelligence reasons, are you concerned that even a public inquiry won't satisfy these questions?
No, I'm very confident that a public inquiry, given the right mandate and focusing on the issues, can absolutely address the concerns being raised, can address the questions, the fundamental questions that people have around what the Prime Minister's office knew, when they knew it, what they did about it or didn't do about it, what we can do to safeguard our democracy, how broad or how severe is foreign interference and how we can stop it. These are the fundamental questions that people are asking. They're the questions that should be answered, and a public inquiry absolutely will be able to answer those.
Do you think Han Dong did the right thing? In English, please.
Yes, I think he did the right thing.
Great,
Thanks so much. Merci.
Mr. Lametti, what do you make of Han Dong leaving caucus?
Look, I watched his speech last night. It was very emotional. He maintained his innocence of the charge that was laid, of the accusation that was laid, and he's going to use this time to show that it's demonstrable.
Is now the time for an inquiry, though, a public inquiry? It seems like this is getting a lot deeper than it was before.
We've asked David Johnson, one of Canada's, I think, most reputable Canadians and a long history of public service, to look into it after having seen all the documents, after having seen everything that needs to be seen, all the evidence, all the intelligence, and we'll let him make his recommendation.
The Prime Minister was unaware of the call from Mr. Dong in the consulate. Does that change anything?
Sorry,
the Prime Minister says he was unaware of Mr. Dong calling the Chinese consulate. Does that change anything?
We'll let Mr. Dong has stepped away from caucus to become an independent. He claims that is false, and we'll give him a chance to prove it.
He doesn't say the phone call didn't happen. He does say it did happen.
It was quite emotional last night in the House. What do you think? Is it time for him to clear his name? Just trying to dry you out, wondering what you think.
But no, absolutely. I think he made his, I think we all saw his speech yesterday, which was very emotional. I think these allegations are very seriously, and I'm glad he's taken the time out now. He's going to figure out what, and clear his name. These are very serious allegations.
A public inquiry?
Look, I think we're doing everything that we can right now as a government, and we'll continue to look at ways how we can support. Thank you.
What do you make about Mr. Dong leaving caucus? Are you concerned about that?
Well, Mr. Dong issued a statement yesterday. I think given the seriousness of the allegations, he made the right decision.
Do you believe the allegations? Does that change your thoughts on the inquiry?
Mr. Johnson's going to be doing his work.
Monsieur, Radio-Canada and Topo qui dit il y a une cour sur la rue Roxham avec les États-Unis et Canada sur la rue Roxham. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez sur ça?
Bien, je pense que c'est une très bonne nouvelle. Là, ça fait depuis des mois, je dirais même des années, que M. Trudeau et d'autres membres de l'équipe ministérielle travaillent fort là-dessus. Et je comprends qu'il y aura des précisions rapidement.
Qu'est-ce que vous savez sur ce deal-là qu'il y aurait?
Ben, j'en sais un peu plus que vous, évidemment. Mais je ne peux pas.
C'est pour ça que les questions vont dans ce sens-là.
Et je sais que vous aimeriez en savoir autant que moi, mais ça va être bientôt le cas. Là, vous aurez des détails prochainement.
Mais donc il y aurait pour la fermeture, c'est ça? C'est bien ça dont on parle?
On n'ira pas là.
On a évidemment en préparation et en prévision de la visite de M. Biden, beaucoup de choses ont pu être faites plus rapidement dans les dernières semaines. Puis, je sais que mes collègues ministres ont bien hâte de vous en parler en détail.
And in English, on Roxham Road, this deal, what do you make of this?
Well, I think it's good news, and I know you would like to know more. You will be knowing more quite soon from my colleagues and the Prime Minister.
There's a deal on Roxham Road with President Biden. Just wondering, what do you think about that?
Oh, you should definitely talk to Minister Fraser and Minister Jolie about that. I'm sorry,
Quebec MP, wouldn't you be happy about that?
I wasn't involved I'm not involved in that file. Obviously, it's an important file, but I can't comment.
Et aussi, qu'est-ce que vous pensez pour un accord avec M. Biden et Canada sur la rue Roxham?
Hélas, je suis pas au courant. Vous devriez vraiment parler à mes collègues, soit le ministre Fraser ou la ministre Jolie. Merci.
Are you familiar with the budget? Are you getting what you asked for?
I haven't seen it. Have you?
I haven't seen the details yet, but I really look forward to it because this is something important. We want to stay a welcoming country, but we want to do things the right way. So I really look forward to the details.
Et en français pour Radio Canada.
Oh, excuse-moi. J'avais comme... Non, c'est une super bonne nouvelle. Je crois qu'on soit arrivé à C'est une bonne nouvelle qu'on soit arrivé à une entente avec les États-Unis. J'ai pas vu les détails encore, alors je vais regarder ça de près. On veut demeurer un pays qui est accueillant, mais on veut faire les choses de la bonne façon. Merci.
So there is a deal then, correct?
I haven't seen. I can't even confirm.
Okay.
So if it's true, I'm happy.
Perfect. Thank you.
President Biden's coming to Canada today. What do you hope to get from the visit?
Well, I'm really looking forward to President Biden coming. The Canada-U.S. relationship is a really, really important one, and certainly from trade. We do over $1 trillion of trade, and I was at the North American Leader Summit just earlier in the year. We talked a lot about how we need to be more competitive and how we build together to be more resilient. So really looking forward to this visit.
Are you concerned that the USTR is held up in meetings in Washington? I recall you were spending a lot of time before the news conference at the Mexican Presidential Palace doing a lot of outreach to the American side. Your opposite numbers aren't really around on this trip, right? Or...
Well, actually, she and I did connect very briefly. I mean, mostly for her to say that she couldn't get here because she has commitments to at Congress, just in the same way that I have commitments in Parliament. But I've been speaking to congressional leaders leading up to this trip. I was with the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister last week, speaking to the Canadians who so well were part of Team Canada as we were renegotiating NAFTA. So I think we've talked to a lot of Canadians and have their input about this important relationship. And tomorrow, it really is about keeping up with this important work with our largest trading partner.
And the final concept is for your parents, for your constituents in Markham. What's the nugget that you want them to think about with this visit? What is it? Is it defense? Is it trade? Is it what is it for Canadians?
I think for Canadians, it's the importance of this bilateral relationship that has served us all so well for a lot of years, where like a lot of jobs depend on. If I think about Markham, I'm a high-tech hub. I have a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. There are a lot of American companies who have, like AMD, like IBM, like Intel, a range of tech and other companies that are American-based companies who employ Canadians, and an entire value chain of small and medium-sized businesses that are a part of that particular supply chain. And I think deepening that in the areas of clean technology, in semiconductors, certainly in EV batteries. GM is in my riding. The work that they're doing around electric vehicles is in Markham. So it's not only just about Markham, although of course I'm their MP. It really is about all Canadians and the work that we need to do together with the U.S. Good. Thanks. Okay. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so the PROC filed its report this week, so what's your reaction to what they said?
Well, first of all, I'd really like to thank the members of the PROC for taking the time to observe this and really asking thorough questions on this. I was really pleased for the most part with my interventions at PROC. I was really happy to see that the PROC committee agreed with my objections. I think that what they saw is what I saw was a miscarriage of justice, a lack of procedural fairness, and an overall ignoring of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And so I think what the PROC committee did was confirmed a little bit my faith in the system in terms of our approach to reconciliation and our approach to how we need to move forward as a government.
Right, and what happens now?
Well, now the Nova Scotia Commission gets to look at the objections, get to look at what we have put on file and to answer for them, and saying, you know, they still have the ability to look at a House of Commons committee and say that we don't agree with them and we're going to continue with the status quo of our first proposed map. And so they do have the discretion, because it's an arm's length commission, to ignore the House of Commons, to ignore UNDRIP, to ignore all of the media that has been out there that kind of has looked at this and said there's something suspicious about the way this was done and the way this was handled. And they can do that, but I hope and I really would encourage them to give us some thought to what the objections were and why they were there, and the need for us to do more to ensure that we have Indigenous representation in this House. I'm also pleased to see that the draft plan on the Declaration of Rights of the Indigenous, of the United Nations Declarations of Rights of Indigenous People, actually in the What We Learned section has a suggested amendment to ensure that the Electoral Boundaries Act in the future takes into consideration Indigenous representation. And I was really pleased to see that released this week as well.
Right, yeah, I noticed that too. And just as a last question, seeing as the committee agreed with all your objections that you put forward, what are the chances you think that the Boundaries Commission will change its draft report or its final report?
Well, I really don't know, but I'm encouraged and I'm hopeful that a House of Commons committee, when they're advising a commission, even ones that's arm's length, that they'll take that under advisement and really give some solid feedback as to why they decided to go this direction. And you know, one of the things that I've seen is that a lot of people are questioning the procedural fairness and the flaws within this system that seems to benefit if you are in a riding that has changes to your map in the first proposal over the people who've gotten it in the second round of proposals in the second round, because what you're given is the ability to raise concerns with your constituents without having to go through the formal process of only having PROC as the last resource besides federal litigation. And I think that the system, we need to look at the system flaws and say, how can we create a system that balances both those who are affected in the first proposal and the second proposal in a equal way? And I think that's something that's being talked about quite a bit. I coined this term procedural catfishing, but I think it's caught on because it's not just affecting Nova Scotia, it's affecting Ontario, it's affecting Quebec. I've had numerous conversations with members of Parliament on all sides of this House that have been affected by this process and the flaws with it, and I think that we need to take a good look at it.
Okay, I don't think I have anything else to ask. Anything else you want to add about going forward? Or?
No, I think that's covered.
Okay, well, thanks again for sharing your time.
Okay, thank you.